Let us get it started. Again, I'm Bill Gibbs. I'd like to welcome you to this session today. And today we'll be talking about stop issuing secure credentials to imposters, a case for the ICAM construct with Dr. Ron Martin. And we'll introduce him more fully in just a little bit. But let me talk a little bit about the agenda that we'll be following. And just to let everyone know, we are recording the session so that those who can't join us in the live session can time shift and see it on demand. Now, here's the agenda that we'll be following today. Just a few slides about Capital Technology University, just in case anyone is not that familiar with us. Session pointers, little housekeeping. Then I'll introduce the presenter and then I'll give control, and the bulk of the time will be devoted to the presentation. At the end of the presentation, we'll make sure that we've left enough time for questions. And then after the questions are all done, we'll talk about the upcoming webinars still to come in this series, and we'll talk about how to get a copy of the recording, the slides, and a certificate of completion. 2 slides on Capital Technology University. Capital is a unique institution in the state of Maryland because we're the only institution, and I'll mention this in the next slide, we're the only institution in the state of Maryland that is both private and STEM focused. But we are nonprofit, private accredited university. We're accredited by the Middle States Commission on Higher Education, the highest level of accreditation available to any university in the United States. And we're also authorized by the state of Maryland, where we reside, just 15 miles north of Washington, D.C., to confer degrees all the way from associates right up to our 2 doctoral degrees, the Doctor of Science and the Doctor of Philosophy. We're an award-winning STEM-focused university, and I mentioned we're the only independent college in the entire state of Maryland that is dedicated to engineering, computer science, information technology, and business. And we are very, very good at what we do. We were just awarded earlier this year the prestigious 2020 SC Media Award for having the best cybersecurity higher education program in the United States. And although this webinar does not have to do with cybersecurity, it is certainly delving deeply into the tech world, and I think you'll enjoy this presentation. And with that, let's talk a little bit about the presentation. We're going to take questions right at the end of the presentation, but we encourage you to post them at any time in the text chat. We'll be monitoring that. And if it looks like the presenter wants to answer a question on the spot from looking at the chat, that's fine. He'll go ahead and do that. Otherwise, we'll circle back and we'll catch all the questions at the end of the presentation. We're not activating mics or webcams for participants, so that the text chat is the way we'd like you to communicate with us. A link to the recording and to the slides will be sent to all registrants, including those who are not able to join us for the live session, and will be available on the webinar's webpage. And at the end, I'm going to talk about how to get your participation certificate. This is available to those who watch it live and those who watch it on demand. And of course, we always encourage you to let us know how we did. Now, with that, I want to get quickly into the presentation. So let me introduce our presenter for today. Our presentation is called Stop Issuing Secure Credentials to Impostors, Identity Credentialing and Access Management, or ICAM construct, and is presented by Dr. Ron Martin, CPP and CPOI. Dr. Martin is a professor of practice in critical infrastructure, industrial control system security, and access and identity management at Capital Technology University. He retired from the U.S. Army in 1999 and from the U.S. government in 2011. Dr. Martin, thank you for your service in both of those capacities. In between his tours of federal service, he served 5 years as a civilian police officer in the Commonwealth of Virginia. During his federal service, he served with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services as the program director for the development and implementation of the department's Identity Credentialing and Access Management, or ICAM program. So he really has earned his chops in the professional world. He also earned his PhD from Capital Technology University. Welcome, Dr. Martin. We're very honored to have you join us today. And with that, I give you control of the session and the slides.
Okay. Oops. See. Okay. Looks like I'm unmuted. Welcome, everybody. Let me see if I can get this thing moving. See what happens. Not yet, Bill. I don't see it. Try it this way. I don't have control though.
Ron, did you click on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, well then I will.
Yeah, you can, wait a minute, let me see, I see
There you
it
go.
now.
Perfect.
Okay, now I got it. Okay, well, thanks, Bill. And I want to give my thanks to Baltimore Sun for facilitating this lecture. I've given this lecture once before, and I think it's an important one for those in cyber, those outside of cyber. It's a very important thing because it's something that we really need to think about as we move forward. This is the agenda. Reason why I have Warp Drive up there is because we will go through this very expeditiously. I will not read the slides. However, I will move out. And as Bill had mentioned, if you have a question, if I'm going too fast or anything like that, let me know. And, we can stop and answer quick questions, but I want to get through the whole lecture and then we can have time to discuss any of your questions. Okay, there we go. Anytime. There you go. As we start looking at what we're doing, and a lot of people have heard about the Internet of Things. When you look at a city, it is Internet of Things on steroids. And as we start implementing, adopting the 5G world, and we're rolling that out now, it become more important that we know who's playing in our space. That's important. We have, identities, and we have all kinds. Whoops, what happened here? Try it again. Okay, we have identities, and we have all kinds of things that are going on, and we just have to know who's playing in our space. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. As we look at this for our protection, we look at critical infrastructure, and he says, I don't know, I don't want to get into all of that. Well, you have to. All of you exist or participate in a critical infrastructure anywhere in the world. And we'll show you how that looks like. So when we do that, and this is a document, and as you see in my slides, and once you get the slides, you'll be able to most of my graphics are hyperlinked, so you can just go right to it once you get the slides. So, I want you to concentrate on the lecture more so than trying to figure out what it is. Once you get the slides, you can just click on it, and it's hyperlinked. When we start looking at the critical infrastructure, we need to look at the risk management, and it's in 3 basic domains as you see here: physical, cyber, and human. I'm not going to go into that, but these are the things that one needs to walk through. I don't care where you are, what your state is in terms of your organization. You need to look at that from a security standpoint. Here in the United States, we have 16 sectors. And these are the sectors. This is why I said that, you either exist, live, or involved with one or more of these sectors. Everybody's in the IT, information technology sector, and on and on and on. Again, these are all hyperlinked. If you're interested in any one of the sectors, you can do that. The FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation here in the United States, has a group called InfraGard. It's a public-private, government-private organization that deals with critical infrastructure. If you're a U.S. citizen, all you'd have to do is go to this link and you can apply. There will be a background investigation. And then once you get vetted, then you'll have access to a lot of the stuff pertaining to each of these sectors, as well as some other things of interest. Here is, I live in Louisiana. I am the North Louisiana Vice President for InfraGard Louisiana, and we have a whole plethora of things that we do. When we start looking at, and I have to start here before we get into the other pieces of the lecture, just so I can kind of set the stage. Threats to critical infrastructure. Extreme weather. Here in Louisiana and in California, we have extreme weather. Fires over there, hurricanes over here. We're getting ready to have our 29th hurricane of the season. And Louisiana, and Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida looks like they're in the bullseye for the latest one. So extreme weather is something. Accidents is a big oops. That's why they call them accidents. Technical failures, we didn't do it right or something happened. Cyber threats, I'm not going to go into that. We all know about that. Acts of terrorism. Well, we have state-sponsored, and also we've had a growing domestic terrorism threat to our infrastructure. So we need to kind of think about that. And everyone in the world knows the impact that a pandemic will have on our way of life. And when we start looking at that, we start looking at how do we approach that? How do we actually pull this together? So when you go into the NIP, the National Infrastructure Protection Plan, this will go into a lot of detail for you to set the stage in your organization. But when we have a perspective, and let's go into the perspectives here. History tells us that we figured that everything, when we have a crisis, this is the kind of thing that we're doing. Increasingly, we need to look at this little guy back here, because that's where our threat's coming from, whether that's a guy sitting on his notebook or doing that. But this is not necessarily where we're at today. Yes, we have to worry about the physical threat, but it's not where we are today. This is a little graphic that kind of shows from a physical standpoint of how we do business. Now, the graphic you see to the left is a group from Flashpoint. It's a Canadian special reaction team, and they have a very technology-centric way of doing business. But as you see here, detect, assess, delay, respond is kind of the way we were taught. Many of us were taught to think about a threat, think about a crisis, detect it, assess it, delay it if possible, and respond to it. So that's kind of what's happening there. So the next thing is now we tried to put this into our cyber world, and those that had a problem, they basically had a big problem with it. The gentleman to the left there, I don't know if he's praying or is he saying, woe is me. But when you get hacked, ransomware and all of that, you just can't go into detect, assess. I mean, you don't have time. You got to be continuously looking at your space. And we'll talk a little bit about something on how you do that. This construct that I talk about is identity, credentialing, and access management. Oftentimes you will see folks talk about IAM, identity access management, or IDM, which is identity management, but they never put the whole construct together. Back in 2011, I had the good fortune of assisting with contributing to this document off to the side, but you can get that document by going to this website, and it basically talks about the construct. And as you look at it, it is kind of how we do things. And I've got another graphic of this. And this is right out of the document. In other words, we have one identity, we assert it into a credential or a token, and we use it for logical and physical access. Federation, a lot of people don't realize what federation is. Federation is just the trust you have of an external organization to come into your organization. In the cyber world, there's certain processes and procedures that you use to trust credentials coming in to your organization. So federation, if we just think of it, trust, and we'll talk about that in detail in just a little bit. But here's where we get started. This is a question that a lot of people ask when you show up at the door. You don't know the person doesn't know you, and it says, are you you? Or are you who you claim to be? And oftentimes, you know where this is going to go. This is your identity. It defines your ownership. It is who you are. It is who you are as a person. It defines you. personal identity verification. Well, we can't have stovepipes in this. Then we have to look at breeder document. This is how we always kind of articulate that you are who you claim to be. So the next thing is that credentials. Most of the time when you come to a place and you generally say, well, okay, give me your driver's license. Give me your passport. Give me that. And then we have somebody look at it. And they look around at it and they says, okay. And then they start taking information off of it. That's all they do. Now, you know, as those that's on this call, that's on this lecture, you know how you were hired at your company. You know how you was done. They didn't do no more than write the stuff down. Okay. Now, you may have moved 3 times in 5 years. And who's to say that that license is accurate? Who's to say that that license is legitimate? And when one thinks about how many different types of licenses we have in this country, and I want you to think for a minute and try to think about how many different types of licenses do we have in this country? Just thinking about it. When we look at this country, we have over 300. I got to change this slide because it's over 300 of valid driver's license and ID cards in the United States. Now, can that one person at the registration desk know everything about the license from a state that's not close to them? When I say everything, I mean everything. How do they know that that license is good? How do they know that it was issued by the state? How do they know? How do they know? How do they know? Could be a fake. You can make it yourself, buy it locally. There's criminal things that's going on. ID chief, every time it goes away, it comes back again. What it is that around colleges and universities, a lot of students want to be instant 21-year-olds. So they send $300 to a website in China with a picture, and they'll fix it up and they'll send them a little box with necklaces in it. And underneath the felt, you'll see your driver's license. That's how easy it is. We did, some associates of mine, we wrote a paper back in 2012. A lot of the links inside the paper is not accurate because the world has changed, and I've spoken with them and we're going to try to update it. But if you want to read it, it really goes into excruciating detail on breeder document authentication. And this is the baseline for this lecture. But I had fun in 2012, and I just got tired of folks doing this. And so I said to myself, I said, all of the screeners, like the receptionists, they have to have calibrated eyeballs because they got to be able to commit to memory all the variations of ID1, ID2, and ID3 documents. All the screeners must detect fraudulent documents in less than 10 seconds. Okay, so the only way that they can do that, they have to apply the DLR standard. And what does that mean? Don't look right. The don't look right standard. And so this little article here, I just kind of talked about that a little bit. Here in November, last November, a year ago, and every year, sometimes 2 or 3 times a year, Customs and Border Protection will have a seizure such as this. Thousands of fraudulent driver's licenses were seized in Louisville, Kentucky, on this route to New York. Okay, so just to let you know, the person that's presenting you their credential may not be who they claim to be. But this is a link to the actual newspaper article. There's some other information in there. So let's talk about credentialing. And oh, by the way, when I show you this, this is right out of the ICAM, the document that I referenced before. This page 10, paragraph, yada, yada. Authoritatively binds an identity. Now, these are traditional things. This is a badge I had at Commerce. These are traditional things. Oh, you know, where's my creds? I'll show you something, flash, and then pass. Well, we need more than that today. But your identity is authoritatively bound to a credential or a token or an object. Okay. And when we start looking at these credentials, we have to look at what kinds are we talking about. You know, you have an ID1, ID2, ID3. An ID1 is basically your common access card, which is CAC, not CAC card, but it's your CAC. It's your driver's license. And it's those types of form factors. And if you notice, if you do get a hunting license or those types of things, they're generally an ID1 document issued by the state. The ID3 documents are passports. Around the world, they all come to the ID3 standard, okay? And that's the passport. The ID2s are the national ID card. Like in Germany, they have an Ausweis that you have to have. You have to have some type of national, but that's an ID2 document. So we don't have those here in the United States, so I didn't put the things about that. We don't really look at them or accept them anyway. When we start looking at a driver's license, this is what's in your driver's license. Everybody was to take out their driver's license right now, and they start looking at it, and this is what you will see. You will see some type of state seal or the state. You will have some micro print, which you can't read. You'll have a photo, hopefully it looks like you. You have some character that's on there, some text, and then you're on the back, you'll have a magnetic stripe, a 2D and a 1D barcode. Wow. Then you have you have all kinds of UV and IR patterns inside of this card. Now, this is by design. Each state, based on the type of credential that you have, each state has a different configuration of their security features. These are security features. So again, that goes back to RUU, and they hand you a driver's license. Can the person detect all of this in less than 10 seconds? When you look at a passport, this is what's in the passport. Many of you that has been overseas and come back to the United States, or you go to other places, not every country has it, but they stick your card into a machine, and what it does is checks for a whole bunch of stuff. But it checks for the RFID chip, checks for the machine readable zone. It checks for all of these security features based on the country of origin. It does that in less than 6 seconds, okay? So I'm just telling you, that's what happens. When we start looking at from an historical standpoint, this is how we used to check for stuff. This is mostly here for money and those types of things, but that's kind of what's happening there. Years ago, I used to issue this to the security officers at the gate, and used to put what we call the bar guide, and this is so that they can check to see if someone is over 18 or over 21. You know, we don't. And as you go to the airports nowadays, sometimes they'll use this little calibrated UV stick just to see that there's something there. They can't read it. They don't know what it is unless they're sticking it into a breeder or document authentication device. They're not looking at. They're just looking for things to be present. As we look at the credentialing for access, we do the breeder document verification first, validation. And what we do is we look to make sure that that is indeed issued by the issuing organization, whether that's a passport or whatever it is. And then we actually vet it. We take that information, we vet you with. You could say, instead of Ron Martin, I could be George Martin. And so that would be a different person. And as I start vetting, and George may have been not a nice guy at all. So the thing is that you want to make sure that you're vetting the right person. You want to vet it with a bona fide document, and then you move through the process, and then you allow some privileges. This is just the kind of a thing, and I highlight that because that is important. The breeder document starts it, because if you're going to detect an imposter, you got to do it with the breeder document coming into your organization. And if you get that one wrong, the rest of it gets to be crazy. So I would say that you need to do that first. There's some other types of artifacts that we're doing on a mobile device, and I will show you an example of that, where we can actually look at a credential and do all of the validation with a mobile device. This is the one that I did. This is Aculin. It's one of the sponsors of our ICAM lab. And so they gave me this little device here that I actually took a picture of my driver's license. It did all these kinds of things, and it does this with the cell phone. The license number, where I live, my country, date of birth, when it expires, and on and on and on. Here's the important part. When I took my picture, it gave me a liveness. It gives me a liveness match, and it says the facial match was 100%. The documented authentication, it went into a database and says, yep, that's an authentic document based on the design characteristics of the state of Louisiana. And then it just gave the ID, and country verification. They have since escalated that into a different modality. Now we're not advertising for it, but this is just one of our sponsors, and they provide that stuff to us in our ICAM lab. It's one of our sponsors. But once you take a picture, as you can see, this little green thing, you take a picture of the driver's license, and you take a picture of the person. You make sure that the person is get a full space, and then it will come up and it will match it just like you saw before. It's a lot faster. It's in less than 4 seconds. It will do all of this. Now, if folks was to have this device and give this to the receptionist or whoever it is, it gets easy because they don't have to worry about calibrated eyeballs. All of the license forms in the United States and a lot of the updates are already there. With 50 plus forensic tests in seconds, okay? It does that and gives you back to your cell phone exactly what happens. Now, this was some years ago, this was one way that we used to use it, and it went into the physical access control systems. And this is the card management systems. And we used to kind of, there was just a big database that used to do that. Now, a lot of that, this was circa 2007. It has escalated into a more efficient process now. So when we want access, and you know this today, you have users that wants to access stuff in the cloud, and you want to access stuff using various devices, Wi-Fi, data, hardline, you name it. They want to use the stuff. So this is what we have to do. Granted access to resources, proper identity verification. And we use the proper identity verification based on your privileges and things that you need to get in. I use an example like this. Let's say, for instance, I need to have my kitchen sink repaired. And I call my plumber, and my plumber confirmed that they're going to be there tomorrow at 10. Tomorrow at 10 comes, and he says, hey, I'm the plumber. I look outside, I see they already told me who it was going to be. I look outside, I see the truck, see the guy in uniform, has his plumber uniform on, and he goes into the kitchen, and he starts to fix it. Now, he's not authorized to go into the master bedroom and play in the toilet there. He's not authorized to go into the den bathroom or the guest bathroom. He's only supposed to be in the kitchen. So in other words, he doesn't have those privileges. He only has privileges to come into my door and go to my kitchen. Now, how do I do that in a cyber world? It's a little bit more that we have to do. But this is basically the concept, to put your head around, a privilege in terms of access. Another way of looking at that is to derive the credential that once you have done all of the stuff you needed to do, and you derive it into your cell phone. And that's basically what this is. These are some publications. This publication here will tell you about that. And this is kind of a diagram, and you can study this at your leisure once you get the slide deck to see exactly how all of this will work. And this previous publication I showed you, you will have these artifacts in it so that you can get a better picture. This is another picture of a derived credential, and you know, one of the things I used to say, they used to use QR codes, near field communications. They put it in a smartphone. They derive the credential. In the case of DOD's CAC, or the federal government personal identity verification, they put that in the cell phone. And then that cell phone, we're going to get rid of cards, because all we're going to do is present our phone to a reader, especially now that we're into a touchless society. Again, this is just another one. It's your mobile access device. You know, people will take their cell phones to places and they will always forget their card. They do. Because I got to get that text. I got to get that. So they will take their cell phone. If you want to screw up somebody, hide their cell phone. You know, that really will cause some severe stuff. When we start looking at it, and this is a real, you know, will put you to sleep kind of slide, but basically this is the architecture on how derived credentials for personal identity verification credentials, non-DOD. DOD uses a similar construct, so it's something that we do. No, I don't want to do that. I clicked on it, and what happened was that, okay, maybe I'll do it this way. I think I stopped it. Okay, so now we said that you are you. Okay, now we're in good shape. We've done through all of that stuff. We did some breeder document authentication, and we're about 90+% sure that you are who you claim to be. Great. Now we're going to give you access. We talked about this, and you are you. So now we have to look at it is it, because we have a lot of systems out there that are dependent on each other. So how do I know this system is the right system communicating to that system? In the industrial control system world, we have sensors reporting stuff to controllers, controllers reporting stuff back to operating devices and things of that nature. If somebody want to upset that process, all they have to do is hack in with the wrong type of credentials, and the sensor can be disrupted. Therefore, everything else can be disrupted. So we just want to make sure it is it. Cameras. We have all these internet cameras all over the country, like on the highways and byways. And let's say, for instance, there's a pan, tilt, zoom feature on the camera. Well, you don't want everybody to move it around. You want to have only certain people. So it has to communicate to it. And you don't have time to necessarily put username and passwords on everything. So I just want to kind of alert you to that. One way, as we start looking at cloud, and I'm not going to get into this, and you can kind of look at this. This is a concept on how to protect your applications in the cloud. The Cloud Security Alliance puts this out, but again, it starts on the authorization, the identity, the credential, and now you're going to go into a software-defined perimeter in the cloud. And this is basically what it is. It's basically used to be called the black cloud from DISA way back in the day. And you can put stuff inside of it, and it's kind of like it hides it in the cloud. So the only people that could see access to it is you have to go through some gateway in order to get in. And once you get in, then you're continuously authenticated to make sure that you are, like I did with the plumber. You know, I still got to watch him because I don't want him in the master bathroom. I want him in the kitchen. So you got to watch where he's playing. And this is a kind of a cloud control devices. And I put this out there like that because, you know, as we go into the Internet of Things, cloud is going to be running 5G. It's going to be running a lot of stuff. I don't have the cars here, but right now, who would have thought that years ago I wouldn't need car keys? Who would have thought years ago I wouldn't need a turntable record player? when I showed my daughter the record player, this was some years ago, I said, put on the record, and she didn't know how to do it because, you know, she was in the Walkman world. Now, if you give them a Walkman, they wouldn't know what to do with it unless it's on their phone. So, you know, just think about where you at today as to what you want to be doing. Multi-factor authentication, and this is very important. If you're going to use this type of system, you gotta stay with the multi-factor authentication. You know, possession factor is what you have. The knowledge factor is what you know, and the inherent factor is basically who you are. And so this is kind of what we do with that. So now we can kind of look at these things and we can present our device to something that gives us logical and physical access. Okay. But again, let's go back to the beginning. We must make sure that the identity is done properly. So you're okay. All right. So you can come in. All right. And you have all kinds of things that will do that. Again, we went through all of this and we talked about RUU, the DLR standard. You are okay. And I could put it is it. Okay. And this is kind of where we're at with that. These are a suite of documents that will talk about that. Now they say, oh, these are government documents. I don't even know. Let me put it this way. Many organizations will look at the NIST documents and they will adapt them to their needs. They're mandatory for the federal government, but many organizations that I have spoken with, they adapt them to their needs. And I will say to you, I will submit to each of you to kind of think about that. When we start looking at the capstone document, it talks about, and I'm not going to go through all of this, and I think you can read this at your leisure, of selecting assurance levels. And then you have the other ones where you have all kinds of assurance levels here for enrollment and identity. So these are just enrollment and identity pieces. And then you have the authentication and life cycle. Remember, just because they came in and you give them a credential, you have to insert them into a life cycle and check on them every now and then. Federation. Remember, I told you about federation. And this is basically about trust. Used to communicate, to people or entities outside of your organization. I don't care if your organization, at HHS, Health and Human Services, we had to federate within ourselves because NIH, CDC, the headquarters, we had to federate to make sure those were the right credentials coming in to access our space. Again, these are the documents. Again, I'm not going to go through all of these. I think it's in. So just wanted to summarize this portion of it. We're saying the ICAM is a consistent approach to managing access. I mean, that's what it is. You have one identity. You put it in a credential or a token, and you see here. It allows you to go into this access management, and access management will go back to this digital identity to verify. Then you have federation, and that's trust to come into this space. Not everybody can come into this space. Again, the ICAM security disciplines that enable the right individual to access the right resource at the right time for the right reason. Period. Aloha. It defends that. And here's what I see, and I need to really talk about that. We have different views of the elephant. You have the physical side and the logical side. And when we start looking at the physical side, and here's what I want you to bring your attention to. If you look to the left and the right, you have identity management, credential management, resource management, privilege management, policy management. You need all of those inputs so that you can make an access decision to come into your facility. And this is also for your security management. One of the hardest things that we had to try to do is some of the techies to explain to them that a physical access control system is more than just access control. And it also is video surveillance, fire, intrusion detection, notification systems, a guard force. All of those things go into a security management system, and plus some other things. So, but if you look here, identity, credentialing, resource, privilege, and policy. Logical, okay? Now, same inputs, identity, credentialing, resource, privilege, and policy, because it's going to use the same source. This is convergence of IT and physical security, information technology and physical security. You're going to bring those together by both of those environments accessing the same directory services. Very important, because previously they had their own little world. Derived credentials, they also will access those services. Okay, I'm excited now. What are your questions? Do we have any questions, Bill? Hey, Bill. Okay.
Attempting to unmute myself here.
Okay.
No, I do not see any questions at the moment. However, I have a couple of questions. You mentioned that you don't want to be confused with George Martin, and maybe you do, because George R.R. Martin is worth $120 million. He's the
oh my God! But he ain't giving me none of that money. I ain't giving none of that money.
He's the author of Game of Thrones.
But they start asking me for money. I ain't got his money though. Okay.
No. In all seriousness, in your work with Health and Human Services, and you mentioned the CDC falls under that, right? That's
Yes.
part of the there.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I mean, this would be patently obvious that someone who's hired to be a clerical individual at the CDC should not ever have access to where they store the life-threatening germs and other critical things. And so in a normal business, I mean, that's a CDC where we're literally talking about stuff that could cause another pandemic. But in a normal business of moderate size, not large, but of moderate size, and yet needs to protect their assets, what would probably be the cost of developing or purchasing that phone system so that you could be assured that people who are, as you say with the plumber example, are only in the bathroom or in the kitchen and not in the bathrooms?
Okay, well, let's look at it this way. It's privilege management, okay? When I get my card, okay, let's say I get my little smart card. I have one here. You see one here. I have my little smart card. And in this smart card, this chip will say I have loaded, the CIO and the supervisor have loaded where I can go and what I have access to. So if I'm the secretary at the front desk, I may be able to go into the main lobby. I may be able to go, if you have it, I may be able to go to the bathroom. I may be able to go to the lunchroom, but I can't go to the executive suite because my card won't let me in. So at the CDC thing, they have what they call exclusion areas, and only the scientists will have their chip will be only asserted for them to go into that one area. NIH has the same problem. There's building 10 up there. If anybody ever tells you you're going to building 10, that means you've got the best of the best of the best up there at NIH in Bethesda, Maryland. But they have diseases and things like that located up in Bethesda, Maryland, that would rival anything that CDC has down in Atlanta. So I would say but what we did, we had to give some very restrictive privilege management protocols as to who can go where. And because we had a lot of problems because they would walk away from their desk, don't take their card, and couldn't get back into their office. So, you know, that's why the phone became more important, because they just present their phone and then that's that. So see, they got a little chip on it and this, that, and the other. So that's kind of how that happens. It's privilege management, and I got a whole series that I can put on privilege management. But that's kind of how that happens. It's through privilege management. The supervisor and the chief technical officer have to be at one to make sure that employee has the right access to the right locations and the right system.
Okay, there are a number of questions have now come in, and we're going to start at the top and move through them. Alan says, where do we draw the line between security and privacy? Excellent question, Alan.
First of all, what do I need for access? I need to know that that card number goes into that location or that system. Where the privacy comes on, what's in the background of that? You know, we don't need to put that on the card. It's what we call PII. We don't need to put your birth date on it. We don't have to put any of that. Now, privacy, when you look at PII, that's those are the things that people can use to access your financial records, your privacy records, and things of that nature. So when we get into the identity, we need that to figure out who you are. But once we find out who you are, we have that in a database that's protected under the privacy rules. And then we kind of give you a digital identity that's removed from that PII. And then that's used to assert. That's what's used to assert. If that answers the question.
All right, thank you. Jeffrey asks, explain how non-federated identity management systems can work together as testing a presented identity.
Okay, a non-federated identity, you don't want to have that planned in your space. That's just like a plumber coming up to, well, let's say an electrician says, I'm here and I'm an electrician and I'm going to fix your pipes. No, I don't want you in here. You're not a plumber. So if it's not federated, it's not trusted. Just remember, let's keep it simple. If it's not federated, it's not trusted. And if it's non-federated, you're going to have to give it privileges based on what that identity wants to do. Like, for instance, let's take a visitor management. If we're going into visitor management, it's not a federated, it's just that, but it is. Like George again invited Malcolm to come see him at this building. So he is validating that Malcolm can come into this building. So when he puts in a request to let Malcolm come into the building, it's kind of like George is federated Malcolm to come in the building because you're going to trust that George is not doing something bad, and he's trusts Malcolm to come into the building. So that's a non-federated, because Malcolm can be from anywhere. So I would say that when you say non-federated, in my opinion, is non-trusted as a global scale.
Okay, thank you. If I remember right, you've done quite a bit of work in Africa, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And this is a great question. Ohio asks, how can this be applicable to in Nigeria and Africa, considering that not all offices and buildings have data connectivity?
Okay, there's two things that can happen with that. When I was in Nigeria, one of the things that was happening, and I had to go and visit a governmental office, and I had to go through 3 levels of, are you who you claim to be? It took us almost 2 hours just to get in to the waiting room. Okay, so I mean, it was really a traumatic experience for me. You can download a lot of these features to the cell phone today, where you can use your cell phone once you've downloaded it, and you can use your cell phone to do all of these things, because the cell phone has enough memory to assert visitor management. So you got to do that every day, maybe twice a day. If you have data or Wi-Fi connectivity, you can link to the cloud. If you have short range access, to resources. You may want to do it to the building. So there's various ways that you can do that, but the cell phone is going to be the key, because mostly everybody I saw in Nigeria has at least 2 cell phones, you know, because they do the SIM cards and this, that, and the other, and that's just the way their system works. But the cell phone could be the key on doing that, because you can be standalone on a cell phone as long as you download that information that they can use to authenticate the person coming in for the visit. I hope that answers Ohio's.
I think it does. And I'm going to bounce down there to a lower question. I'm going to skip a couple and then come back to them, because this is very related. He says, if ICAM is loaded on an internet connected mobile device, is the mobile device secure enough for ICAM not to be hacked? That's really quite in right with what you were just talking about.
You're not going to load your whole database on the cell phone. You're only going to load that information that's needed to authenticate that person to come into the portal. So in other words, Ron is supposed to visit facility A at between 10 and 12. And that visitor management information gets loaded to that cell phone for that security officer or receptionist or whatever. So whenever they pull it up and they see Ron's, let's say, QR code, if we use a QR code, that QR code is only good for that time period. So that QR code is your access that should be trusted in this system. So once it comes after that time frame, it doesn't work anymore, so they don't use it. So you're not loading the whole database inside of that cell phone. They can't handle it. But you're only loading that information, that visitor management information that's needed for that period of time.
So somewhat it's on a need to know basis.
I mean, well, it's not only need to know, but you know, let's say for instance, I'm at the front gate and I'm gonna have 1,000 people come in. So before I go to work, they give me my cell phone and it has the 1,000 people in it. And it has the times that they're supposed to come in. They show me the identifier that they have, they were issued, and then they go in. If they come outside of those hours, they don't get in. If they're inside, the same database or the same thing is used that you got earlier. If you need to update it, you have to take the phone back and this, that, and the other. If you have connectivity problems. If you don't have connectivity problems, that can be on a perpetual basis. But if you do have connectivity problems, you can download it from your computer, put it on that cell phone, and then you can check the people as they come in.
All right, I think we have time for just 2 quick answers, and then we move on. Dr. Nikki says, thank you for your presentation. While many online applications do not require MFA, but simply encourage it, do you foresee that changing with possible mandates or other regulations?
I'm thinking that, and here's where I'm at on this. The multi-factor authentication, you're going to need more than just username and password. There's one ICAM sponsor organization that issues a multi-factor authentication process that will allow the chief technical officer or the CIO, the chief information officer, to have 30-character, all jumbled passwords. And the user doesn't have to remember it. All they have to remember is to have their credential and know a 6-digit PIN number. Okay. And once they put that PIN number in, that goes to the back end to that 30-character password. And the CIO or the CTO can change that at any time they want to throughout their whole systems. Well, it's 10 or 10,000. They can change it like that just by pushing a button, and all of those passwords will be done. Now, that's multi-factor. Now, if you want to go into a very secure location, you can say that you must put your finger or your eyeball so that you can have a biometric authentication. Now, that's a different piece, and that's a more secure area. Okay.
Okay, I was hoping we could get to 2 questions, but I see that the time is escaping us. For those whose questions were not answered, and there are several of you that we did not get to their question, I would encourage you to write down Dr. Ron Martin's email and just throw that question out to him. Ty, you had a question.
Oops. Oops. I don't have the MARTIN. I just noticed it. I got to change it. MAR is RLMARTIN 1.
Okay, we left the and off.
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
okay, yeah, I just
Okay,
noticed that.
thank you. Or you can email, just forward your email to me, and that's a good segue to where we're going now. I wanted to mention that we have 2 more webinars coming up in the Impact of Emerging Technology on Society series. On November 17th, Machine Learning and Emerging Systems, and on November 24th, Construction Safety Advancements. Both of these presentations will be on Tuesday and again at noon. So next week and the week after next. And we encourage you to sign up for those if you've not done so already. Here's the email address, or excuse me, the URL that you need to register for those. Now, we are approaching the top of the hour. I like to make sure that these always end within the 60-minute time frame. Let me just mention that we have a participation. I was reading what I had here, and it's redundant to some earlier material. We have a certificate of completion that we'd encourage you to request. All you need to do is I'll be sending out an email to you that includes a link to the recording and a copy of the slides in PDF. All that you need to do to obtain the certificate is just simply reply back to that email, and with the name that you want on the certificate, we'll issue a certificate to you, and you can use it for whatever purpose you would like. When you do that, when you reply back to me, if you do have a question for Dr. Martin, feel free to send it to me. I will forward it on to him to handle. Now, with that, we are officially done. And I'd like to again thank you everybody for joining us. And I know, yes, Diane O'Neill has typed it in, rlmartin1@captechu.edu. And a good question, are we going to have additional webinars on the Internet of Things? And the answer is yes, there are some coming up, probably not in the Emerging Technology series, but our our regular CapTech Talk webinar series. We have an Internet of Things webinar coming up in the spring, and I'm looking forward to that. I'll give you more information about that at another time. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. We are officially done. I will stop the recording and the session will be over. Thank you again. Look forward to getting an email from me. And I'd like to again thank our presenter, Dr. Ron Martin. This has been very informing to me, and I've appreciated and enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Dr. Martin. Thank you all participants, and we are now officially done. Thank you.